Okay, so imagine you want to make like a real difference, a difference that tackles food security and the economic growth, all with chickens.
Right.
So that's what this business plan for a chicken hatchery in Uganda is all about, and that's what we're diving deep into today.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fascinating, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think it all starts with the scale. I mean, this plan aims to hatch 38,000 chicks P4 month.
Wow.
Which translates to almost 500,000 chicks a year.
Wow.
And to do that, they're using something called a press.
Now, press. When I first saw that, I thought, laundry.
Yeah, right. It's not about ironing feathers.
Okay.
A press, in this context, is it's a big, large-scale incubator. And it's designed to hold and maintain, the ideal conditions for thousands of eggs all at the same time. And that level of efficiency is it's crucial to reach those ambitious production goals.
So big-time incubation.
Yes.
Tons of chicks.
Tons of chicks.
This is starting to sound like a serious business.
Yeah.
What kind of financial picture are we talking here?
Well, the projected annual revenue is over $549,000. So that's significant, especially considering the initial investment is only an estimated $19,500.
Okay.
The big costs, as you can imagine, are the incubator itself, the hatchery building,
right,
and then a reliable generator.
To keep everything running.
You got to keep the lights on, you got to keep those eggs warm, so yeah.
So $19,500 to potentially earn over $549,000. That's a pretty impressive return.
Yeah, you're looking at an 88% profit margin with a payback period of under 4 years.
Wow.
But it's not just about the money.
Right. You mentioned that earlier. What's the social impact here? How's this hatchery benefiting the community?
It's creating jobs.
Yeah.
It's creating jobs, especially for young people and women in Uganda. And these jobs offer economic empowerment. And they contribute to, a more stable, more prosperous community.
So it's a win-win all around. You're increasing access to a very important source of protein.
Absolutely. This hatchery can play a significant role in addressing food security in both rural and urban areas.
Right.
But to really get a feel for this operation, we need to zoom in on the day-to-day,
Let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are we looking at in terms of running this hatchery each month?
The monthly operating costs paint a very vivid picture. First, you have the parent stock. So that's a flock of 1,500 chickens that are bred specifically for laying eggs. That's a big expense right there. And then, obviously, you have the cost of the eggs themselves. And this is where it gets interesting. The business plan calls for coffee husks.
Coffee husks. Now, I'm picturing chickens sipping tiny lattes.
Yeah.
But seriously, what are coffee husks doing in a hatchery?
It's not a coffee break for the chicks.
Okay.
Coffee husks are used as bedding for the newly hatched chicks. It's surprisingly effective, it's absorbent, and it's readily available in Uganda.
So it's locally sourced, it's sustainable.
Yeah.
That's smart. What else are we looking at in terms of costs each month?
So you have your essentials like disinfectants.
Right, of course.
Got to keep everything clean. And then there's a significant expense for vaccines.
Vaccines for the chicks. What kind of diseases are common in chickens?
Well, one of the major threats to poultry is a parasitic disease called coccidiosis. Coccidiosis, and it can be devastating to a flock.
Oh, wow.
So vaccination is really crucial.
To keep the chicks healthy, keep the business profitable.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a cost, but it's a necessary one.
Right.
And despite all of these operating expenses, that profit margin still looks pretty darn attractive.
Yeah. But having great product is only half the battle. You got to have a market for it.
Yeah.
So how strong is the demand for chicks in Uganda?
Right.
Are there enough people that want to raise these chickens to justify all these chicks?
This is where it gets interesting. There's high demand for chicks in both rural and urban areas in Uganda.
Okay.
In rural communities, chickens are a vital source of food and income for families.
That makes sense. But why urban? I wouldn't picture, city dwellers keeping chickens.
You might be surprised. In urban areas, there's a growing trend toward raising chickens for, sustainable living. Access to fresh, affordable protein. And with a hatchery this size, they're not just limited to Uganda.
So there's a potential to expand beyond Uganda.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
This business plan actually includes the possibility of exporting chicks to neighboring countries. So you're tapping into a larger regional market and expanding their impact on food security beyond just Uganda's borders.
Okay, so we've got high demand locally, A&D regionally.
Yeah.
But it can't all be smooth sailing.
Of course not.
What are some of the challenges that they might face?
Well, challenges are inevitable.
Sure.
We already talked about coccidiosis, and how important vaccination is,
Yeah.
but there are also logistical challenges.
Okay.
So, for example, some of the equipment needed for the hatchery, it can be sourced locally,
Okay.
which is great. It supports Ugandan businesses.
Right. Contributes to the overall economic impact.
Exactly. But some specialized equipment needs to be imported from places like Europe or India, South Africa, China.
So relying on those imports, that could lead to some complexities.
Oh, definitely. Things like fluctuating costs,
Sure.
shipping delays, navigating import regulations, these can all impact the operation.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
It adds a whole other layer to consider.
Yeah.
So we've got the challenges, but what about support? Is there anything in place to help businesses like this in Uganda?
Oh, absolutely. The Ugandan government has a policy of a duty-free importation for agricultural equipment.
That's huge. How does that help?
Well, it significantly reduces the cost of, setting up and running a hatchery by eliminating import taxes on essential equipment. And this policy really demonstrates, the government's commitment to supporting agricultural development and encouraging investments like this hatchery.
It's encouraging to see that kind of support in place. So we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about the scale of this operation, the financial potential, the social impact, the day-to-day, the market demand, and even the challenges in support systems.
And we're just getting started. There's so much more to uncover about, the potential of this chicken hatchery, its impact on Uganda and the surrounding region.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm already hooked. Stay tuned as we continue our deep dive into the world of Ugandan poultry. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back to our deep dive into this Ugandan chicken hatchery. Before the break, we were talking about the government support for agricultural development, which is definitely a positive sign.
Right.
But I keep thinking about that ripple effect of a project like this.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just NST about the hatchery itself.
Right.
Imagine the impact on local businesses.
Yeah.
Think about, the feed suppliers,
Absolutely.
transportation services, even, carpenters building chicken coops.
Oh, yeah. All of that.
It's like a chain reaction of economic activity, all stemming from this one hatchery.
Exactly, a chain reaction. And don't forget about the individuals, the empowerment of the people. This hatchery is providing jobs, especially for youth and women, giving them a chance to earn a living, support their families, contribute to their communities.
So we're talking food security, we're talking economic growth, we're talking community development. It's amazing to think it all starts with a simple chicken. But I'm curious, what happens after those chicks hatch?
Right.
Where do they go from there?
That's a crucial step, and it's one that's often overlooked. These aren't just products, they're living creatures. And they need to be transported safely and efficiently to the farmers, both in those rural A and D urban areas.
Right.
So this requires, a reliable distribution network and make sure those chicks arrive healthy and on time.
So logistics play a big role in the success of this whole operation.
Huge role, yeah.
Is there anything else? What about
Well, there's another element that's often overlooked. Education.
education?
Simply providing chicks isn't enough. Farmers need the knowledge. They need the resources to raise those chicks successfully.
That makes perfect sense. So what kind of educational support could the hatchery offer?
Well, think, training sessions on proper feeding, housing, disease prevention techniques. They could even help develop local veterinary services.
Wow.
Ensuring that farmers have access to the expertise they need to keep their flocks healthy.
So the hatchery could become like a hub of knowledge and support, empowering farmers to really thrive in this poultry business.
Exactly. It creates a cycle of success, where the hatchery's impact extends far beyond just its own walls. And it's that interconnectedness that I find so fascinating.
Yeah, it's a reminder that a well-designed business can really be a catalyst for positive change. Zooming out a little, could this model work in other places?
Oh, absolutely. That's the exciting part. This hatchery plan could be adapted and replicated in other regions.
Okay. That are facing similar challenges with food security and economic development. Imagine similar hatcheries in different parts of Africa, Asia, even South America.
That's a powerful vision, a global network of hatcheries each, tailored to the specific needs of their region.
Yeah. And remember, this all started with a single business plan for a chicken hatchery in Uganda. Proof that sometimes the simplest ideas can have the greatest impact.
It's inspiring, and it really highlights the importance of investing in agriculture, particularly in developing nations.
For sure.
Before we wrap up, though, I'd love to get your take on what surprised you the most about this business plan. Anything that really stood out to you?
Honestly, the coffee husks.
Coffee husks.
I mean, who would have thought such a readily available local resource could be so vital to a successful hatchery?
I know. It's such a clever and sustainable solution. Just goes to show that innovation can come from some pretty unexpected places. Absolutely, yeah. And for me, it just underscores the importance of looking beyond the obvious, finding those creative solutions that work within the local context.
Speaking of looking beyond the obvious, is there anything from this deep dive, anything that that you'd want our listeners to explore further on their own, something that kind of sparked your curiosity?
You know, we touched on the export potential,
Yeah.
but I think there's a whole other deep dive to be had on the complexities of regional trade in East Africa.
Yeah, I'm picturing those chicks crossing borders. What kind of challenges and opportunities do you think come with that?
Oh, there's tons. You've got everything from tariffs and regulations to transportation logistics, not to mention navigating cultural differences in poultry preferences across countries.
Right. And then there's the competition
Oh, for sure.
from existing poultry producers in those neighboring countries. It's a complex landscape.
It is, but it's also a landscape ripe with opportunity. I mean, imagine a network of hatcheries across East Africa,
Yeah.
each specializing in different breeds or products, working together to meet the region's growing demand for poultry.
That's a pretty incredible vision. From one hatchery in Uganda to a regional network transforming the poultry industry. Quite a leap. But I think that's a perfect place to pause for now. We'll be back after a short break to wrap up our deep dive and leave you with some final food for thought. Welcome back. We've been on quite a journey with this Ugandan chicken hatchery.
We have.
From coffee husks to regional trade. It's been an eye-opening exploration of what seems like a simple business
Right.
with the potential for a really wide-reaching impact.
Yeah, it has been fascinating.
It has.
And you're right, we've only just scratched the surface. I mean, there's a whole world of knowledge out there about this industry, particularly in developing nations. The role it plays in food security, economic growth, community development.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I think it's important to remind our listeners that this is just one example, one story.
Yeah.
But it's a story that speaks to, I think, a much larger trend, a global movement towards more sustainable and equitable food systems.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This hatchery is like a microcosm of a much larger ecosystem,
Right.
showcasing the potential of these local solutions to address, these global challenges.
Yeah.
And for anyone listening who's feeling inspired, I encourage you, keep exploring, keep learning, keep asking questions.
Well said. Who knows? Maybe the next big idea, the next innovative solution is just waiting to be discovered. And maybe, just maybe, it'll involve chickens.
You never know. The world is full of possibilities.
That's the beauty of it all, isn't it? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those minds curious and stay tuned for more adventures and knowledge.